Hi, I'm Bill Bartmann. Welcome to my home. This evening, we're going to be talking about the 9 steps to achieve any goal. But before we do that, I want to talk to you generally about success, and I also want to tell you about some of the results that the people who have followed this method have been able to achieve. And then we'll get into the individual 9 steps. They say that you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. And I think they're right, and I've learned quite a bit from my mistakes. I've learned probably the most important thing that anybody could learn from a mistake, and that is I've learned the secret of success. I've learned that in order to be successful, you have to be willing to take risk. And most people are afraid to take risk because they're afraid they're going to fail. And most people are afraid they're going to fail because they worry about what other people think about them. So the real secret of success is to be able to find a way to raise or increase your self-esteem. Because if you could raise your self-esteem, you'd be less concerned about what other people think about you. And if you're less concerned about what other people think about you, you'd be more willing to take risk. And if you're more willing to take risk, you mathematically increase your chances of success. So I can look and see that some of you might be saying, well, Bartmann's been lucky and he's made a couple of bucks and he's done a couple of things, but what does he know about, self-esteem? Well, I have a degree in psychology, but I don't think that makes me an authority on self-esteem. I've written a book about self-esteem, but I don't think that makes me an authority on self-esteem. Now, I think I'm an authority on self-esteem because I've lived it. I've seen both sides of self-esteem. I've seen low self-esteem and I've seen high self-esteem. I've seen the face of low self-esteem as I grew up as a child in welfare and poverty. I saw it as I was a 17-year-old kid laying in a hospital bed, scared to death because I was paralyzed from my waist on down. I saw it as a young man who was fired from his job. I saw it as a husband who had to support his wife and 2 small daughters for an entire year on a $10,000 limit credit card. I saw it as a man who had his cars towed away by the IRS because he couldn't afford to pay his taxes. And I saw it as I stood in front of a bankruptcy court and had them take away everything I had owned and worked for my entire life. And I saw it as I was afraid to reach inside my own mailbox to pull out the bills that were inside, knowing that I couldn't afford to pay them. And I saw it as I contemplated the how, not the if, of my own suicide. I've seen the face of low self-esteem, but let me put a little color on that for you. I'm one of 8 children. My dad is a janitor. My mother cleaned houses for a living. And though they both worked every day of their life, the meager income they generated from those 2 jobs just wasn't adequate to feed 10 of us. So we got by on handouts from the Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, and from welfare. We moved in and out of 8 different rent houses by the time I was 14 years old. Some of those houses didn't have indoor plumbing. 2 of them we were evicted from because the city said they were unfit for human habitation. I left home when I was 14. I lived at a John 3:16 mission. I've lived under a bridge viaduct. I lived one whole summer in a farmer's hayloft until he found me and burned my clothes. I joined a traveling carnival when I was 14 years old. And for the next 2 years, I traveled the country. And when I was 16 years old, I upgraded and joined a street gang. The name of the gang was the Manor Boys. The name came from an abandoned building that this gang had taken over. There were 40 of us all together. And if you've ever seen the movie Oliver, you have some image of what it was like. All of these teenage kids living without adult supervision. During the next 2 years as a Manor Boy, I know we broke all the commandments. And I'm pretty sure we broke most of the laws. Some of the Manor Boys died. Some committed suicide. Some went to prison. None of them joined the priesthood. And during those 2 years that I was a Manor Boy, I learned how to fight. I learned how to drink. And by the time I was 17 years old, I was an alcoholic. Now, when you're a carny and a member of a street gang, going to school isn't important. And it wasn't important for me. I didn't go any more often than I had to. And in fact, I didn't go at all unless the truant officer caught me. And he wasn't that good. So he didn't catch me that often. Subsequently, I spent 5.5 years in high school, and I didn't graduate. By the time I was a junior the second time, I was reading at the 5th grade level. When I was 17 years old, I tried to enlist in the Marines, and they rejected me. They told me I couldn't hear in one ear and was deaf in the other. I've seen the face of low self-esteem, but I've also seen the face of high self-esteem. I saw the face of high self-esteem as I went from that life of welfare and poverty to becoming the 25th wealthiest person in America. I saw the face of high self-esteem as I went from that 14-year-old homeless kid to a $2 million, 12,000 square foot home. I saw the face of high self-esteem as I went from a high school dropout to becoming a lawyer and having Harvard Business School do a case study on my management techniques, a case study they still teach today to all of their MBA students. I saw it as I went from working at that traveling carnival to being named the National Entrepreneur of the Year by NASDAQ, USA Today, Business Week, and the Kauffman Foundation. I was then inducted into the Entrepreneur Hall of Fame. And then I was named as one of the top 100 entrepreneurs in America for the last 100 years. I saw it as I went from being a member of that street gang to being awarded a permanent place in the Smithsonian Institute's Museum of American History. They said because I created information technology that had revolutionized an entire industry. And I saw it as I went from that teenage alcoholic to being awarded the American Academy of Achievement's Golden Plate Award, an award they previously bestowed upon 5 U.S. presidents and 3 Nobel Prize winners. I saw it as I went from eating out of a dumpster to dining at some of the finest 5-star restaurants in the world. I saw it as I went from riding a city bus to flying my own $25 million jet aircraft. I saw it as I went from drawing unemployment to employing more than 10,000 people here and abroad. I saw it as I went from being over $1 million in the hole to over $1 billion to the good. I have seen both sides of self-esteem, and that does make me an authority on it, and it makes me the person who's able to tell you that the real secret for you to achieve whatever you want to achieve, to become whatever it is you want to become, starts with the lowest common denominator. It starts with self-esteem. So if you can find a way, and I can show you the way, to raise and increase your self-esteem, then any goal you set for yourself, you'll be able to accomplish. Let me tell you about some of the results that other people have achieved, people who have been able to follow my path and the plan that I lay out for them and the 9 steps that we're going to get to in just a little bit, and some of the things that they've been able to accomplish. I'm always reluctant to share these results with an audience for fear they might think I'm exaggerating, because the results are really that incredible. I have been doing this now for over 20 years, and I've done this with over 1,000 people. And the results I'm going to share with you have all been audited by the IRS because they wanted to be there to get their share. And every single one of them has been the subject of either a major newspaper or a major magazine or a major TV story. Because I work with these people very, very closely, frequently I'm invited to share the celebration. And because I've been invited to share the celebration, I have been physically present when these people have achieved their promises. One of the people that I've been able to work with, and I was personally present when that individual achieved his promise, when he achieved his goal, and he received a $10 million check. That's another individual that I worked with, and I was personally present when he received his promise and received a check for $3.2 million. There's a third person that I was personally present for when he achieved his promise and received a check for $2 million. There's also a young lady that I worked with, and I was personally present when she achieved her promise and received a check for $1 million. Now, there also are hundreds of other people, some of which I was not present for, however, that attained their promise, and they received checks that were anywhere from $200,000 up to $1 million. But not everybody's goal or promise has to do with money. Some of them have to do with things other than money. I was personally present when one of the ladies I worked with, a mother of 8 children, achieved her promise. And she was able to spend 2 weeks on the streets of Calcutta, India, with Mother Teresa before Mother Teresa died. There was also a young black man who wanted a recording contract from Nashville. I was present